Hello, welcome to the channel of Chen Mo. When we start on the first day in business services in public practice, there would usually be an induction that takes from a couple of hours to a week, depending on the firm that you are joining in. After the induction, the first job handed to you is usually a simple BAS, which is short for Business Activity Statement, or you may also be assigned a simple tax return. In this video, we will introduce what it is and how to complete a business activity statement. The Business Activity Statement is a form submitted to the Australian Taxation Office by registered business entities to report their tax obligations, including GST, pay-as-you-go withholding, pay-as-you-go installments, and some other taxes. However, the most usual ones are GST, pay-as-you-go withholding, and pay-as-you-go installments. Now, we're going to explain those three terms one by one. GST is Goods and Services Tax. It is a broad-based tax of 10% on most goods, services, and other items sold or consumed in Australia. To illustrate in a bird's-eye view, GST is like this. Company A produced something worth $100 and sold it to Company B for $110, of which $10 is GST, and handed over to the government. After processing, Company B sold it to Company C at a price of $165, of which $15 is GST. But deducting the $10 that had been paid to Company A before, Company B handed over to the tax office $5 for GST. Company C then produced the product worth $200 after processing and sold to you and me for $220, of which GST is $20. Similarly, Company C deducted the $15 paid to Company B before and handed over to the tax office $5 for GST. Therefore, the tax office collected a total GST of $20, but it is the end consumers who are really paying for the $20 of GST in total. Although keep in mind that if your client's business turnover is less than $75,000, they are not obliged to register for GST because there is no need to charge GST on the sales price. Thus, no need to lodge a BAS for GST either. If your client's business is not for profit, that threshold raised to $150,000. Some items are GST-free, which means GST is not added to the price when they are sold, regardless of whether your client has registered for GST or not. For example, most basic food like flour, sugar, water, etc. Is bread most basic food? A bread without a sweet coating or filling is most basic food and GST-free, unless it is sold in a restaurant. Because consider yourself do get extra service on top of the bread when you are sitting in a restaurant. In a real work scene, how do we work out the GST to report to ATO? Most of the businesses nowadays use accounting software for bookkeeping. Some of your clients would hire their own bookkeepers and lodge business activity statements all by themselves. That's cool. But some clients would ask you to act as a tax agent to lodge on their behalf. So when you receive your client's file, for example, it is an zero file, instead of going straight to the business activity statement function to extract the numbers and report, you would check the file and do your reasonability test first. First, we check if the bank is reconciled, because that gives us the most basic confidence that at least the bank transactions are recorded in the file. If it's a new client to you, you do need to check the file in more details to make sure that your client's bookkeeper has done his or her job correctly. If it's an old client that you are familiar with and are confident with the quality of the file, then we do a standard reasonability test. And if you found any way requiring further investigations, contact your client and correct them when necessary. Every firm has their own work procedures and work papers to follow. Now, what is PAYG withholding? If your client's business recruits employees, contractors, or businesses who don't quote their Australian business number, your client has a role to play in helping the payees to meet their end-of-year tax liabilities. This is done by collecting pay-as-you-go withholding amounts from the payments made. For example, your client Tom made a fortnightly wage payment of $1,152 to his assistant Jack. He can look up in this table, which can be found on the ATO's website, and from that table, Tom found that he needs to withhold $108 from Jack's fortnightly wage. So he ended up paying Jack $1,044, but in the meantime reports and submits the $108 to ATO. So when Jack lodged in his own tax return for that year, on that $1,152 wage income he received, $108 has already been withheld to ATO for the purpose of Jack's income tax. What is PAYG installments then? Well, this PAYG has nothing to do with employees. When your client is estimated to have a large liability to pay at the end of the financial year, ATO requires regular payments throughout the year so that your client don't have to pay a large tax bill when lodging the tax return at the year end. Those regular payments are PAYG installments. Okay, we have went through a few most basic items when preparing a business activity statement for your client. Business activity statement is a quite common job for graduates and junior accountants. Hope you will find them easy peasy soon. Okay, see you in the next video.